Hare Krishna, welcome back to our Bhakti Yoga Journey series. So today we have a very, very special topic, a very exciting topic. Today we are going to dive into the very esoteric bhavas of Bhakti, the very esoteric moods of Bhakti. In fact, today's chapter, it's going to show two very sharp, contrasting emotions. One, a feeling of pain coming from separation from the Lord, and another one, exact opposite, a feeling of intense joy coming from reunion with the Lord. So we are going to see this two very contrasting emotions, one of separation and one of celebration, based on the journey of Lord Krishna, where he is now about to leave Hastinapur and go back to Dwaraka. So the background here, so the war is over and Krishna was about to leave, but then Kunti Maharani, she offered those heartfelt prayers and then she made Krishna stop. And then Krishna also thought, okay, let me spend some more time. My sister Subhadra is also here, so let me spend some time with her, right? And then Yudhishthir Maharaj went through that whole dilemma last week. We saw how Krishna personally took all the Pandavas to Bhishma. And now today we are seeing how after all that is over, Krishna now is deciding, okay, I think I have spent enough time here. So let me now go to let me now go back to Dwaraka. So now this is the setting here. So Krishna, he's about to leave Hastinapur, and a very beautiful description is given of the glory, the opulence of Yudhishthir Maharaj's kingdom. It is said that how the Mother Nature so wonderfully cooperated with Yudhishthir Maharaj that earth produced all the necessities in profusion. And due to the fatty milk bags and cheerful attitude, the cows used to moisten the grazing grounds with milk. So where cows would go for grazing, they would be wet because of not rain, but because of milk dripping from their udder, right? So that shows the opulence that, and even the rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, all the herbs, they all gave in profusion all the blessings and all the resources. So very powerful lesson Srila Prabhupada points out here, that how when the ruler of a kingdom is a righteous person, automatically material nature facilitates the harmony and whatever necessities needed for the citizens, she provides. In fact, it is said that how the ruler's karma also affects the karma of the citizens, and vice versa too. The king takes 1/6 of the karma of the citizens, right? Also, the citizens also get. That is why when the rulers are not pious, when the rulers are not rooted in the principles of dharma, in righteousness, in morality, then that disruption is observed at the grassroots level, at the citizen level, at the societal level also. That's a very important lesson that Prabhupada writes here. And then finally, Krishna decides to leave for leaves Hastinapur to go to Dwaraka. And a very beautiful scene is now described about how, what was the setting given. So it is described that just as Krishna was about to leave, visualize this scene, that Krishna is sitting on the chariot, right? And all the kings and the queens, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, they all are standing there near the chariot. They don't want the Lord to leave, but still what to do? Who can stop the Lord, right? He is Swarat, he is supremely independent, right? And at that time, all the, very beautiful verse that Suta Goswami explains at how that these pure devotees of the Lord, they are so absorbed in the hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord that they cannot, even for a moment, stop remembering and glorifying the Lord. Such advanced souls are now put in a situation where they have to see their separation from the Lord. So what kind of an intense pain their heart is going through? It is said that, all their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They were looking at the Lord without blinking their eyes. They were moving here and thither in perplexity. They did not know what to do. They completely lost their composure. It is described all the women in Hastinapur. They were all crying. But then it is said that, when a person is traveling, tears are a sign of pain, and it's a kind of a, it's a negative emotion, and it may create some bad luck, right? But of course, these tears which are coming out are tears in separation. They are actually very, very highest state of devotional ecstasy, of devotion. So, excuse me. So, as the queens were, they were overwhelmed with these tears, they were suppressing their tears so that they don't create any inauspicious scene for the Lord. See, this is the mood of a devotee. The Lord is supremely auspicious. What bad luck can you give to the Supreme Lord? But from their side, they are making sure that everything is auspicious for the Lord, right? And then beautiful drums, mridangas, dholas, nagaras, dhunduris, dundubis, flutes, veenas, bheris, all these beautiful instruments are being played, like a big grand procession, as if some big rock star has come to Hastinapur, that kind of a departure they were giving the Lord. And then people were standing on the rooftops and they were showering flowers upon the Lord and his chariot. And then Arjuna, at that time, he was holding this beautiful umbrella. And look at and this is one thing you will notice throughout Bhagavatam. When you're reading books like Bhagavatam, it's not just to collect some information, but actually reading Bhagavatam is like a meditation. And such beautiful graphic scenery is described. It is said that Arjuna was holding an umbrella that had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Right? To that level of, you may be wondering, why all these unnecessary details are presented in Bhagavatam? Why don't they come straight to the point? Krishna left Dwaraka, left Hastinapur and went to Dwaraka. End of line. In one line, you could have finished the whole episode, right? But it's not like a newspaper report. Scriptures like Bhagavatam, Puranas like Bhagavatam, they are not only just communicating some historical information, but they are also providing an opportunity for the reader for their mental absorption. How I can absorb, by visualizing the whole scene there. Then it is described that Uddhava and Satyaki, they began to fan the Lord with decorated fans. Then Krishna was seated on scattered flowers that were there all along the road. And then it looked like Krishna was, though he is a supreme personality of Godhead, he was behaving like an ordinary person in this whole procession, right? And at that time, from the rooftops, all the men were on the street, and as a social etiquette, the women were standing from the rooftop, and from those jharokas, from those windows, they were showering flowers and cheering the Lord, and they were having some conversation among themselves. And it is said that this ordinary talk of the women of Hastinapur were more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. And you may be wondering why. I thought that's like ordinary gossip, ordinary talk. How can Bhagavatam say they are more attractive than the Vedic texts? Because what were they talking about? They were talking about Krishna. How were they talking about Krishna? With intense love and affection. So that is Kirtan, right? So that ordinary conversation these ladies were having was Kirtan, which is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. And when you read the text or read these words that these women are saying, right, you will see what kind of devotional absorption these ladies had, right? So first they glorify the Lord for his transcendental position, that how he is beyond the three gunas but appears like an ordinary human being, right? And even though he created this whole world, he's enacting as an ordinary person in this world, right? And then he goes on to say that how All the great devotees are completely cleansed of material consciousness just by meditating upon the Lord, by engaging in devotional service upon the Lord. And then because they are ladies, they now start relating with the other fortunate ladies. First, they start by saying that, oh, how glorious are the Yadavas, that Krishna decided to take birth in the Yadu dynasty. And how glorious are Krishna's parents who saw Krishna's all activities. And how glorious are those wives of Krishna. So you understand here, because they were all women, they were connecting to Krishna in that Madhurya Bhav, in that conjugal rasa. And so they were exhibiting, it's not that they were envious of the queens of Dwarika, but it's their way of expressing, their genuine happiness for those queens, saying how fortunate those queens are that they are always favored by Krishna. They are getting such special connection, such intimate connection with Krishna. They are blessed with constant smiles by Krishna. What kind of great vows have they undergone? What tapasya have they done in their past lives? How many yajnas did they have they done? Right? So of course, you cannot get Krishna through yajnas and tapasya. It's a rhetorical statement saying that you cannot compare their extraordinary good fortune. Right? And then they are reminiscing all those Krishna's pastimes with his wives, that how Krishna, like a chivalrous hero, he went and, he literally took them. If you know the scene, Rukmini, she wrote this love letter to Krishna saying, Krishna, I'm forcibly getting married to some other person whom I don't want to marry. I have already given my heart to you. Please come and save me. Right? So Krishna, he comes, and Bhagavatam describes it just like how a lion comes and takes its prey in front of all the hungry jackals who cannot dare attack the lion because they know they are going to get defeated. With that same chivalry, right? Krishna just walks into that arena, takes Rukmini and kidnaps her right in front of, everybody else, Shishupal and others who were interested in Rukmini, right? So you see, you have to understand, when such statements come in Bhagavatam, you have to understand the mood behind these statements. Because these women, they were in that conjugal rasa. Chivalry is a mood with which, how a woman looks at her hero. So with that heroism, they are trying to glorify Krishna, right? And how Bhaumasura, when he kidnapped all those 16,100 princesses, because Bhaumasura illegally kidnapped them, and exploited them, Krishna he went and saved them. And at the end of it, they said, okay, Krishna, thank you for saving us. But, we spent so much time here away from everybody. And we were externally, by social standard, people will look at us as corrupted women. So who in the world will accept us? We cannot go back to our parents' house, and no, ordinary person would want to marry us, because they may doubt our character, because we don't know what happened to us. So which person would marry us? They would question our chastity and our purity. So Krishna says, okay, don't worry. I will marry all of you. I will give you the respectable position in society as a married woman, as a respectable, chaste lady. So just to show that favor, Krishna accepts them as his wives. So all this special pastimes, these ladies of Hastinapur, they were all reminiscing. So then it is described that Yudhishthir Maharaj himself, he came, right? And he engaged his 4 divisions of his army, the horses, the elephant, the chariots, and army, to accompany with the Lord. Right? It's like, not that Lord needs any protection, but it's an honor. See, when the Prime Minister or the President comes, there's a huge convoy. All the roads are blocked, and it'll be like a big 10 cars in front, 10 cars in the back, right? Because it's a sign of glory. So that glorious, departure, Yudhishthira has arranged for Krishna. And then there's a beautiful description of how the path that Krishna took, and a beautiful geography of that time of the ancient India is also described in Bhagavatam. Prabhupada interestingly writes in one of those purports that how one can even study geography when you carefully study Bhagavatam. How the land, how the terrains were, where the deserts were, where the rivers were. So the whole path is given, right? And then, so while all the ladies are suffering in pain of separation, Arjuna, Yudhishthir, all the Pandavas were, literally heartbroken. It almost entire Hastinapur was in tears. It was like a soulless body, a lifeless body. Sometimes when we are completely exhausted, how are we? We're just like, we are living, but we are as good as dead. That is how everybody in Hastinapur became, right? It's in that mood of pain and separation. And then a contrasting scene is now going to come. Now Krishna is going to enter into Dwaraka. Remember the war, and even before the war itself, Krishna left Dwaraka to support Pandavas in the preparation for the war. It has been many, many months since Krishna was last in Dwaraka. So now, as soon as Krishna enters into Dwaraka, very beautiful poetic description comes. Krishna takes his conch shell, Panchajanya, and starts blowing it. And just as Krishna was blowing his conch shell, it was described that that white conch shell and the beautiful reddish lips of Krishna looked like there's a beautiful white swan playing in a red lotus. That's a poetic description Bhagavatam gives. And as soon as a conch shell was blown, it didn't seem like an ordinary conch shell. Right from the outskirts of Dwaraka, as Krishna was blowing this conch shell, everybody understood, oh, this is Krishna's conch shell. Krishna is back. They all, again, the lifeless Dwaraka Vasis, they became alive. Right? And then they left all their work. It is described that they all started running towards, the entrance of Dwaraka to receive Krishna. And out of nowhere, they started arranging all kinds of festoons and banana decorations, mango leaves. If you've seen any typical Indian festive decoration, right, all the beautiful rangolis, right? It's because the Lord of their heart is coming back. So they were not thinking, oh no, Lord, why did you not send me an email before coming? I would have made all the arrangements ready, or at least you would have dropped a WhatsApp message. They didn't need all this, right? Because when love is there, you don't need systems to run the show. Love naturally flows. And immediately the resident, they started decorating, the whole Dwaraka, started showering the streets with scented waters, so with perfumed waters. And then and everybody started coming and dancing, all the singers and dancers, all the women decorated in beautiful decorations. And then they started entering into, they came before the chariot of Krishna, wanting to give him some entertainment. Like it was like a whole carnival, instant carnival. They just heard one conch shell sound, and in no time, the entire streets of Dwaraka were filled, like as if it's like some big carnival that was happening, right? And then as Krishna was entering, he was looking and very mercifully glancing. And with every glance of Krishna, it was like as if he was reviving the dead. Everybody became alive. Their hearts filled with joy. And according to their own age and position and rank, Krishna was accordingly reciprocating with each and everyone. And beautiful, the Brahmanas were coming and singing Vedic chants, Vedic hymns to welcome the Lord. All the elephants and all the animals for procession, they were there decorating the streets, right? Everybody wore their best clothes and best jewelry, to go and greet the Lord, right? And then, all these different people, they had come to welcome the Lord. And then the Lord started greeting with according to the rank. For some people, he was shaking their hands. For some people, he was embracing them. For some people, he was just looking and smiling at them, giving them assurance that, yes, don't worry, I'm back, right? And then, as Lord entered, now, this is all still, like traditionally, all these, the way these ancient kingdoms are organized. So there were the outer precincts of the kingdom, right, where the military would be arranged. And then as you enter, you will see that's where, the many of the citizens would live. Then there would be another gate. And as you keep going inner and inner into the city, that's where the royal palace would come. So right now, Krishna greeted all the citizens, then certain military personnel, and now the intimate associates are coming because now Krishna is entering into the center city. In fact, today, if you want to see an example of that, you'll have to go to Jaipur in India. You will see Jaipur, it has multiple gates. As you keep going inner and inner and inner, that's where you will come close to the king's palace and also the temple of Govindji. So you have to cross multiple gates because Govindji, Krishna as Govinda, he is the real king of Jaipur. So he is right in the center. And you will see even today those gates are still there, So like that, that's how these cities were on. And now Krishna is coming closer to his his personal associates. And then it is described that, when from the rooftop, the ladies of Dwarka, they were running and they were looking at the Lord, and it is said that it was called Ikshana Mahotsava. Ikshana means to see. It was a festival of seeing, as it is described, right? Seeing whom? The Lord. So as Lord is entering, it was like a whole festive environment there. And then they were saying, oh my God, they started glorifying the beauty of the Lord. Very, very beautiful description. I'd like to read out some of the translations here. They were saying, oh, look at the Lord's chest, which is the abode of the goddess of fortune. And his moon-like face is like a drinking vessel for the eyes. Like imagine when you want to take a vessel, you take a glass, and when you're drinking, imagine you're drinking your favorite drink, whatever it is, right? So then you don't just, when it's your favorite drink, you don't just drink like water and just put it aside. You want to savor every sip. You put it in it's like, imagine you are drinking amras with some dry fruits and saffron on it. Amras is mango juice. In summer, it's a big delight in India, right? You don't just drink it all in one go. You sip the glass and you tilt the glass slowly so that a small portion comes and falls on your tongue. And then you are licking the glass, you're licking the amras, you're not letting go of that glass, right? You're still holding it close to your mouth. And then you're still not letting go of the glass, you're savoring it and still holding that glass. So imagine Krishna's face to be like that glass filled with amras. And, our lips are like the eyes. So with that, the intensity with which we are savoring that mango pulp, with that intensity, they were savoring Krishna's face, which is like the vessel for the eyes. And his arms are the resting places for the devatas, for the demigods. And his lotus feet are the refuge for the pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except the Lord. And then it is described that as the Lord passed along the public road of Dwarka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella, and white feathered fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flower make it appear as if a dark cloud was simultaneously surrounded by sun, moon, lightning, and rainbow. Can you imagine? Is it ever possible? Sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows all decorating the sky simultaneously while there's a dark cloud upon it, right? So sometimes in describing the beauty of the Lord, we will fall short of metaphors, because no worldly metaphor can actually capture the entirety of the beauty of the Lord, the experience of visualizing the Lord. So then, as now Krishna entered now in his house, even the house also, the external part of the house is where the elders live, and in the inner chambers is where the queens would live. So first Krishna meets his mothers, headed by Devaki and his father Vasudeva. And it is described that, look, at this point, Krishna was already 100 years old. And Dwaraka and his mother Devaki, much older than him. But look, what an extraordinary sight. As soon as Krishna came and he hugged Devaki and took blessings from her, out of her pure affection, it is said that her breast started springing with milk. It's unimaginable. So that shows that the origin of motherly love, the source of all that motherly affection, is Krishna and Yashoda, Krishna and Devaki, right? So when the original mother of all mothers and the original darlings of all darlings, Krishna, when they both come together, right, what do you expect to happen? So all these external considerations of age and all these things, it just defies our common understanding. And then Krishna entered into the Antapura, into the inner chambers of his palace, right? And it is described that all his wives were waiting there for him, right? And it is described that as soon as they saw Krishna, in a very shy way, out of social custom, they were standing there, covering their faces out of etiquette. But within their heart, they were just eager to go and embrace the Lord. But, in front of elders, that was a social etiquette that time, right? There was no PDA, public display of affection, right? So out of some etiquette, they were just standing there waiting for the Lord to come to them. But then, so many elders were there. So what to do? So then they were very, with lot of happiness, these queens, they were shedding tears in their eyes, happy that Sutta Goswami also describes that how extraordinary a husband Krishna is. He is the best husband that there can ever be. What pity upon these women of Dwaraka that they have to bear so much of separation from such an ideal husband, right? So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? And then as Krishna goes, to the inner chambers, right? Then it is described that these women were so excited that first they smiled at Krishna, and then they wanted to go and embrace, but what to do? In front of it, they could not. So what they instead did is they sent their children towards Krishna and said, now you go and embrace. And as the children were embracing Krishna, they felt as if, because a child is an extension of mother's body, mother's energy. So they were happy that, oh, look, I am embracing my husband. I am embracing the Lord. That was there, right? And it is described that Bhagavatam describes how these queens of Dwaraka were so extraordinarily beautiful that even Cupid or even the great Lord Shiva could have perhaps fallen for these women. And yet, it is described that none of them could agitate the senses of the Lord, right? So, Sutta Goswami makes that statement to show that how we began this discussion saying from the prayers of the ladies of Hastinapur, saying how the Lord, he seems like an ordinary human being, but he is not bound by the material gunas. He is an extraordinary human, extraordinary personality. That fact is again corroborated here, because even though it seemed like Krishna was behaving like an ordinary householder, taking care of all his family and children and, his wives, etc., etc. But it is not that he would ever get affected by these so-called worldly attachments, right? And then what to speak of his devotees? If the Lord himself, right, then if the devotees themselves are beyond the gunas, what to speak of the Lord who's empowering these devotees? So like that, this very, very beautiful contrasting emotion is described, and there's so much to learn from us. In fact, I would strongly encourage you to read this, though I went at a very fast pace. Please read, these two chapters, very, very beautiful chapters. But what is of important, relevance to us is, when we read this chapter, you will see this is the part, or these are those sections in scriptures where you need to switch off your logical head. You need to switch off your head and open your heart and receive these pastimes. And this shows very importantly what is the mood of bhakti? Whether it be the separation of the residents of Hastinapur or whether it be the celebration of the residents of Dwaraka, both are actually signs of bhakti, where whether in separation or celebration, a devotee is always absorbed in the Lord. This is the important lesson here, right? And we need to understand that what prevents us from developing that same level of absorption. Because when you read these pastimes, even why Sukadeva Goswami, why Vyasadeva has given so many details, so many graphic details for us to visualize these pastimes, is so that we can absorb our mind in these pastimes. And that is ultimate, goal of bhakti, to be absorbed in the Lord's pastimes. But at our level, rather than being absorbed in the Lord's pastimes, we are absorbed in our time pass or how we waste time, right? So there are, why does the mind does not want to absorb in these beautiful spiritual narrations? Why does the mind hanker for ordinary mundane things to absorb in, right? So there are, at 4 levels, I would like to present reasons and also 4 solutions how we can overcome the challenge also. At a very, very basic level, when we are very, very new to the world of spirituality, or perhaps we even haven't begun our world of our practice of spirituality, the mind is so absorbed in its past impressions, its past samskaras. So the first, past samskaras are the reason for the lack of devotional absorption. So what happens is that, what exactly are samskaras? We go through so many pains and pleasures in our life from various sources, from movies, from going to different food eateries, from travel or this and that, because there's so many sources of pleasure that we go through. What pleasure does, it creates a strong impression, pleasure and pain both, right? If pleasure creates an impression of attachment, pain creates an impression of aversion. But nevertheless, these attachments and aversions based on these past impressions, they start governing our thought process. And therefore, when we want to begin our spiritual practice, you want to sit and read Bhagavatam, but your mind is going, oh, I wonder what's the score of this football match going on right now. Why? Because in the past, you derived great pleasure from watching football. So your mind naturally wants to gravitate towards that, right? Or you want to sit down and meditate and you're thinking, should I order those pizzas from my favorite pizzeria again, right? Why? Again, you see, the past samskara. So the mind tends to gravitate. So what is the solution? How do I prevent my mind from going in that path, right? It is by creating some sense of discipline. A disciplined lifestyle helps you to reset our past samskaras, right? But discipline also has to be done in a right way. Discipline has to be in a pleasurable way. If I may put it, you have to create a pleasurable discipline routine for yourself. Why? Because what happens is, if the discipline is creating pain, you will end up becoming averse to spirituality, right? So this is where, especially, of course, the mandate, if you're very new to the world of spirituality, perhaps this is more of a responsibility of whoever is guiding you and training you in that journey of spirituality. Or if you are in a teacher's role, or maybe perhaps if you're in a parent's role, for example, right? Your mandate is to impart spiritual education to your children, to your dependents, to your students, in a way that they relish it in a pleasurable way. Right? Otherwise, just like how pleasure can create attachment, pain can also create aversion. So if that if the discipline is not pleasurable, then you will end up becoming averse to such spiritual practice, right? So this is the first very important principle. Then somehow we develop some discipline in our life, and despite the urges coming from our past samskaras, we somehow fight the urges by some inner determination, and we start our spiritual sadhana trying to absorb our mind in Krishna. But then you know what happens? I lack taste. How long will I just keep doing something just because I have to do it? Because discipline has a particular limit. How long will you keep doing something that you don't like? Right? So lack of taste will become the second reason now for you to go back to your time pass, go back to your old sources of pleasure, right? And this is perhaps a very big challenge, especially once you begin your spiritual journey. I'm sure you would have seen this, where you want to sit down and read Bhagavatam, you want to sit down and meditate, you want to do your practice, but I don't feel like doing it. I lack taste. But if you're told, can you sit and watch a movie or 3, 4, 5 movies back to back? I can do it. In fact, you don't even realize you're scrolling on Instagram and you realize, oh my God, I spent 3 hours. Right? Because we have so much taste in Instagram, we don't have taste in Bhagavatam. So why does this happen? This is a very important point, and this is also a mistake as sadhakas. What we do is, when we begin our spiritual practice, see, basically spiritual practice has 3 components: dealing with the body, dealing with the mind, and dealing with the intelligence. How you train these 3 things is what spiritual practice is all about. So the senses, the body and the senses, are trained by routines. Like for example, your asana practice, you do a physical routine. Some physical service, you do some routine. Or even certain cultural aspects, certain etiquette aspects, how to wear dhoti, how to put on tilak, all these lingos, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, all these lingos, the external aspects, they are just some algorithms. Just by practice, you master them. How to play mridanga, for example, just through some external algorithmic routines, you master them. So at physical level, you need repetition. At intellectual level, also, believe it or not, we need repetition. You want to memorize Shikshashtakam, you want to memorize Narsingarati, you want to memorize shlokas from Gita and Bhagavatam, right? So what will you do? Repeat, right? So through algorithmic repetition, the senses and the intelligence can be trained. But the mind rebels to repetition. So as much effort as we put in repetitive training for senses and intelligence, you have to also train the mind in cultivating taste. Meaning, try to go deep in your practice and try to feel your practice. When you are doing any kind of practice, whether it be physical asanas, whether it be studying, whether it be especially when you are chanting, that's the most important sadhana as bhakti yoga practitioners, right? So for us, when we are chanting, it's not just chanting is not the japa is not just producing some sound and rotating the beats, right? It's about trying to absorb your mind, trying to feel every syllable, trying to feel that connection to Krishna. So we must learn to train the mind in developing some taste in Krishna conscious activities. While learning is one step, perhaps more important than learning is yearning for association of those who have taste. Because this devotional taste is an inductive effect. Just like how, I don't know, maybe when you interact with people who are fans of some big celebrity, we're just hanging around with them and hearing them about their love for that favorite celebrity, you also start thinking, okay, maybe even I should start following this celebrity. So just like that, when you're in the close association of those advanced devotees who have taste in chanting, who have taste in reading Bhagavatam, who have taste in different devotional activities, you also develop that taste, right? So learning and yearning is the way to overcome the lack of taste problem, right? Then you begin your journey, you overcome your past samskaras through discipline to somehow develop little taste and become little steady in your practice. And the third problem, why our mind gravitates towards these other sources of pleasure, worldly sources of pleasure. In fact, to experience this problem, you need to quote unquote become little senior in your practice, meaning spend more years. Only then this problem will come. In the beginning stages, you may not have this problem, right? This comes where you feel as emptiness in your life, a lack of purpose in your life. I'm waking up every day in the morning. Mind you, it is not that they are troubled by their mind, their past samskaras, because after certain years of devotional practice, it is said one of the symptoms of bhakti is kleshagni, means all the mental sufferings are destroyed. So at this point, there is so much of peace, and that peace actually makes it haunting. And you wake up in the morning and you're wondering, I seem to lack that fire which I used to have in my beginning days. Because in the early days, you want to literally read every single book, do every single asana, hear every single lecture possible, visit every holy dham possible. There's a kind of a fire within you. But now I've been there, done that. You also cultivated certain taste. It's not that you are deviating from your practice. You have some taste, but this is more of at an inner space. Your mind is also kind of absorbed in your practice, but in your heart, you feel a kind of emptiness. That emptiness comes due to lack of purpose. And that lack of purpose is overcome by taking up some responsibility in your spiritual life. Responsibility on behalf of the spiritual master. Responsibility on behalf of Krishna.
You can say that if you don't have it. And let's stay in touch. Any other questions, anything anybody wants to ask, can ask now. I have 5 more minutes. And if you want to hop off, you can hop.
Okay.
So for those.
Okay, there is somebody. Yeah, I think there's some overlap somewhere. Anyway, right? So this is the point. Yeah. So when you start taking up some responsibility on behalf of the spiritual master, that is where now you will find a purpose in your spiritual life, right? And this is the stage where from a beginner you have now transitioned to a more mature person. From a kanishta you have risen to the level of a madhyama, where now, because in the beginner as beginners we are saying, oh Krishna, I am yours, I am yours, I am yours. But when you mature, you say, oh Krishna, you are mine. I need to take care of you. I need to take care of your mission. I need to take care of your bigger plan for all the living entities of this world, right? Now, taking up a responsibility doesn't mean that now you start your own international movement and, but even something so simple, just go render some simple service, like, I know one person who for many, many years would take up the responsibility of distributing the Charnamrit. When they do the Abhishekam of the Lord, the Charnamrit, he would sit every day and, serve the Charnamrit. Some people would take up the responsibility of, passing on the plates during Prasadam, in the Prasadam queue, right? Very consistently, they would come. In fact, that's the time where they take a sense of ownership of that responsibility, right? So that is a very important stage where now that stage is technically called as mamatva. Mamatva means that It's not ego. It is not that you become attached to your activity or something. It's a sense of responsibility that comes in. So this is the next level in your spiritual growth, right? Where from I am Krishna's to Krishna is mine. If I don't do this service for Krishna, who will do it? Right? So that is the mood that comes in, right? And then the fourth reason why the mind gets deviated into various kind of distractions and worldly pleasures, and this can happen at any stage, right? And this is where, when you lack some nourishment, shelter, and love from Krishna, when you're not experiencing that nourishment, shelter, and love from Krishna, that's when, again, because the heart cannot be empty, right? So it starts to fill that void through some worldly sources, right? It's a very deep psychological phenomena. What exactly happens is that we all in our life are going through some hidden insecurities. Everyone, it could be, as to, if you are very young, one day you'll ask, oh, if I become too serious in my spiritual life, what if, I am not so materially well placed? Maybe now I'm young, my body and mind are young, so I can do anything. But when I grow old, what is my security, right? Or if you're already old, you may be wondering, oh, will I be able to remember Krishna at the time of my death? I spent so many years practicing my spiritual life. Will I be able to pass the final exam of death, right? Or sometimes you may be thinking, oh, do I have enough financial resources? What if there's suddenly a war and inflation and, crazy things are happening in the world around us, right? Is there somebody to really protect me? So always there is some insecurity always going on in our head. And this insecurity, when it overwhelms us, ideally the way to handle that is having that kind of an emotional resilience to say that, hey, things will be taken. Krishna is there, he will take care. But when we lack that kind of a emotional resilience, when the EQ is low, what happens is IQ takes over. What does it mean? You start overthinking. Oh, this is the problem that I have. So I have three solutions: A, B, and C. But if A does not work, then I have problems E, F, and G. For E, I have the problem H, I, and J. And as the mind starts to overthink, you will run out of letters and words and numbers and Roman numerals and whatever notions, Greek alphabets. You will run out of ways to tag your thoughts, right? So many times, and why we end up overthinking also, understand, is that we feel good. We think we are solving the problem, right? Especially when you are, like, think about it, you are worried about some exam, you're worried about some important board meeting, right? You can't enjoy your meal. You can't peacefully sit with your family members and enjoy time with them. You only want to talk about the problem, think about the problem, and create some kind of a surety for yourself. This is the problem of overthinking. This overthinking happens especially with smart people. Ordinary people will only have panic attack. Intelligent people end up overthinking, right? And because this overthinking makes you feel good, but then, overthinking can be strenuous because mentally you'll be fatigued at some point. So I need a break, I need a release. Where is Instagram? Let me do some brainless consumption for some time. Now I feel good, right? At that point, if you tell, oh Prabhu, can you please read some Bhagavatam for some? No, Prabhu, this is not the time. I'm too anxious. Don't tell me. I will do it after some time, right? So this is the stage where we start procrastinating our devotional activities, right? And so the solution is, for such people, is begin your journey of surrender. Have faith that Krishna exists. Krishna is the protector. He is the master. In fact, he is your only protector. So this overthinking coming due to lack of nourishment can only be overcome by deepening our sense of surrender to Krishna. Right? And it is a very personal and individual journey. There is no template for surrender. One thing is for sure, Krishna will definitely put us through some life situation where we have to make a choice of either surrender or panic attack or overthinking, depending on what type you are, right? So which path do you choose is a choice that we have to make. So it only comes by cultivation of that mood of surrender. That's the only solution. And that's why when we read these exalted souls in Bhagavatam, right, these are all the souls who have completely surrendered their life. Therefore, for them, they can only think of Krishna constantly. In fact, for them, it's an effort to not think of Krishna. So when we are reading this pastime, you'll be wondering, hey, what's wrong with these ladies of Dwaraka and ladies of Hastinapur? Don't they have any work at home? Why are they leaving all their work and running after to see Krishna leave or to welcome Krishna? Why are they constantly talking about Krishna to each other? Right? So these emotions cannot be understood at our level because we don't have that level of absorption and devotional surrender. So when we read these pastimes, we should see, oh, these are not just some hyperboles. These are not just some over exaggerations. Sometimes to glorify someone, you write some poetic exaggeration. These are not poetic exaggerations, but very deep devotional sentiments, right? Which can only be understood by deepening our devotional surrender. So these are the 4 challenges. So at first level, we said past samskaras. That's what makes us distracted. So the way to overcome that is by creating pleasurable discipline. The second level we said is by lack of taste. So that is overcome through right learning and yearning. Learn to train the mind properly in developing taste and yearn for association of those people who have that taste. The third one, we said that emptiness of the heart that comes due to lack of purpose. So the solution was taking up some responsibility on behalf of the spiritual master, on behalf of Krishna and his bigger mission. And fourth, that lack of nourishment in the heart, lack of love, shelter, nourishment, that emptiness, and that insecurity, that overthinking and that panic, all that can be overcome, right, by beginning our journey of surrender, right? So these are the ways in which we can transit from doing time pass to absorbing in Krishna's pastimes. All right. So these are a few thoughts which I wanted to share. So let's open the forum for any quick questions or comments. Yes, Apurva, go ahead. Let me see. You'll need to. Yeah. Can you unmute yourself? Check once.
Yeah. Hello, Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji. I didn't clearly understand the 4th point which you mentioned, that devotees sometimes feel that lack of nourishment. Like, why do they feel it? Krishna will reciprocate, right? Like, this is what we learn, that Krishna reciprocates because they have given their life to Krishna. So why do they feel that gap?
Somewhere you answered that question in your statement itself. When it's not that reciprocation Krishna is not an intellectual exercise. It's not an information that I know. You have to experience that in your life, right? It's a journey that we go through of evolution, right? And then when that and this happens many times in our devotional life, where we are intellectual devotees, we are theoretical devotees, where we go through the routines of devotional life, we do all our sadhana very nicely, we are like tick mark in our things to do task list, right? But somewhere along the way, we are not feeling the process. We are not reflecting on our own inner states in the process, right? And more importantly, we are what I like to call as, or Prabhupada likes to call as, fair weather devotees, meaning when everything is nice, we are very good in our devotional life. When things become little challenging, we keep our devotional life on the side burner, right? Why all this is happening is because somewhere we are dependent on certain external things in our devotional life. Like, for example, my intellectual capacities, my connections, my social connections, so we are not actually surrendering to Krishna. We are surrendering to our intelligence in devotional life. We are surrendering to the social connections. Sometimes we may even surrender to an institution and think we are making advancement, right? So that's when Krishna will slightly shake the institution. And then suddenly, oh, where do I stand now? Right? So, yes, this is that, we have to deepen that connection to Krishna. That's where we really, and it is very subtle. It will take years for us to come to this stage. So don't worry, at least start working on the first three. Then at one point, Krishna will test you sufficiently to see whom are you surrendered to. Okay. All right. Any other quick questions or comments? Let me see the chat box. Okay. All right. So let's end our discussion here. Thanks you all so much. So we are almost coming close. We finished 2/3 of the first canto. The last 1/3 of the first canto is left, and now we are entering into the crux where Parikshit Maharaj, the main protagonist of this book, about him, the description is going to start from the next chapter. So we're going to see some very, very special things about this King Parikshit. All right. So thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.